fourth grade. Welcome back to another Read Aloud. It's Tuesday, don't ya know? For today's Read Aloud, friends, we're going to be diving into Chapter 4. But before we dive into Chapter 4, riddle me this. What fashion accessory is literally pointless in the city of Ember? Stay tuned to the end of the video to find out. What fashion accessory is literally pointless in the city of Ember? It's gonna blow your mind. Also, I want you guys to kind of share with me why no one has sent me any videos of them doing the Bugfoot scurry. I mean, if Luna's doing this on the rooftop and we were all trying to really envision this story in our mind, I gotta see, some ideas on what this Bugfoot scurry looks like, okay? Send me what you think the Bugfoot scurry would also look like. You guys can send that in either a video that your parents can email me, or you can send me a TikTok video if you want. What song would she be dancing to? All right. With all of that being said, friends, I want you guys to also comment in the section below in the comments on what happened when Dune saw the generator in Chapter 3. Like, what was he feeling? What did he see? Was he feeling hopeful or discouraged? Was Dune feeling like the doom of Ember is upon us? Why is that? Can he fix the generator? All right. So with all of that being said, let's jump into Chapter 4. Chapter 4, my darlings, is called Something Lost, Nothing Found. What do you think that is? Good job. All right, I don't know if you guys can hear me when I whisper. The audio on this thing is not very good. All right, one day when Lina had been a messenger for Granny tore a bit more of the cover off the couch and yanked out another puff of stuffing. It doesn't matter, she said. I'll put it back together later. Let's put it back together now, Lina said. I don't think what's lost is in there. You don't know. Granny gazed at Lina blankly. The baby? Oh gosh. You hadn't forgot the baby. Oh, yes, I think she's down in the shop. By herself? Lina stood up and ran to the stairs. She found Poppy sitting on the floor of the shop, enmeshed with a tangle of yellow yarn. As soon as she saw Lina, Poppy began to howl. Lina picked her up and unwound the yarn, talking soothingly, though she was so upset that her fingers were trembling. For Granny to forget the baby was dangerous. Poppy could fall downstairs and hurt herself. She could wander out into the street and get lost. Granny had been forgetful lately, but this was the first time she completely forgot about up the white tufts of stuffing and jamming them back into the hole she'd made in the couch. It wasn't in there, she said sadly. What was it? It was lost a long time ago, said Granny. My father told me about it. Lina sighed impatiently. More and more her grandmother's mind seemed caught of Pebble Jacks, which she'd last played. She could explain the rules of Pebble Jacks, which she last played when she was 8, or tell you what happened at this singing when she was 12, or who would she dance with at the Cloving Square dance when she was 16, but she would forget what had happened the day before yesterday. They heard him talking about it when he died, she said to Lina. They heard who talking? My grandfather, the 7th mayor. And what did they hear him say? Ah, said the grandmother with a far-off look. That's the mystery. He said he couldn't get at it. Now it is lost, he said. But what was it? He didn't say. It didn't matter anyway. Probably the lost thing was the old man's left sock or his hairbrush, but for some reason the story had taken root in Granny's mind. The next morning, on her way to work, Lina stopped in at the house of the neighbor, Eveline Murdo. Miss Murdo was brisk in her manner and in her person thin, but she was kind in her unsmiling way. Until a few years ago, she'd run a shop that sold paper and pencils, but when paper and pencils became scarce, she closed shop. Now she spent her days sitting by her upstairs window watching people in the street with her sharp eyes. Lina told Miss Murdo about her grandmother's forgetfulness. Will you things are all right? She asked. I certainly will, said Miss Murdo, nodding twice. Lina went away feeling better. That day, Lina was given a message by Abram Schwinn, who ran the Callery Street vegetable market, to be delivered to Lina's friend Clary, the greenhouse manager. Lina was glad, though her gladness was mixed with a little bit of sadness. Her father had worked in the greenhouse. It still felt strange not to see him there. The 5 greenhouses produced all of Ember's fresh food. They were out past Greengate Square and at the furthest edge of the city. Nothing else was out there but the trash heaps, great moldering, stinking hills that stood on rocky ground and were lit by a few floodlights high up on poles. It used to be that no one went to the trash heaps but the trash collectors, who dumped the trash and left it. Now and then a couple of children might go there to play side of the heaps. Tumbling down. Lina and Lizzie used to go when they were younger. They'd pull out the occasional treasure, some empty cans, maybe an old hat or a cracked plate, but not anymore. Now there were guards posted at the trash heaps to make sure no one poked around. A special job called trash shifter or sifter had been created. Each day, a team of people methodically sorted through the trash heaps in search of anything that might be at all useful. They'd come back with broken chair legs that could be used for repairing window frames, bent nails that could become hooks for rags, stiff with dirt that could be washed and used to patch holes in window blinds or on mattress covers. Lina hadn't thought about it before, but now she wondered about the trash sifters. Blech. It's hard to say for some reason. Where they were, because Ember really was running out of everything. Beyond the trash heaps was nothing at all. That is, only the vast unknown regions where the darkness was absolute. How she worded that, where the darkness was absolute. Just makes you picture this like idea of like just darkness stretching on forever, right? I like how she uses descriptive words to kind of pull us in. Good writers do. From the end of the Diggering Street, Lina could see the long, low greenhouses. They looked like big tin cans that had been cut in half and laid on their sides. Her breath came a little faster. The greenhouses were a home to her, in a way. She knew that she was most likely to find Clary somewhere around the greenhouse 1. A small tool shed stood beside the door to greenhouse 1. Lina peeked into it, but saw only rakes and shovels. So she opened the greenhouse door. Warm, furry smelling air washed over her, and all her love for this place came. Out of habit, she gazed up toward the ceiling as if she could see her father there on his ladder, tinkering with the sprinkling system, the temperature gauges, and the lights. The greenhouse light was wider than the yellowish light of the Ember streetlight. It came from long tubes that ran the length of the ceiling. In this light, the leaves of the plants shone so green they almost hurt. Here with her father, Lina had spent hours wandering along the gravel paths that ran between the vegetable beds, sniffing the leaves, poking her fingers into the dirt, and learning to tell the plants apart by their look and smell. There were the beans and their curly tendrils, the dark green spinach, the ruffled lettuce, and hard pale green cabbages, some of them as big as newborn babies' heads. What she loved best was the rub of leaves of the tomato plant between her fingers and and breathe in the pungent powdery smell. A long, straight path led from one end to the other of the building. About halfway down the path, Clary was crouching by a bed of carrots. Lina ran toward her, and Clary smiled, brushed the dirt from her hands, and stood up. Clary was tall and solid, with big knuckles. She had a square jaw and square shoulders, and brown hair cut in a short, squarish way. You might have thought from looking at her that she was a gruff, unfriendly person, but her nature was just the opposite. She was more comfortable with plants than with people. She was strong but shy, a person of much knowledge but few words. Lina had always liked her. Even when she was little, Clary did not treat her like a baby, but gave her jobs to do, pulling up carrots, picking bugs off cabbages. Since her parents had died, Lina had come many times to talk to Clary or just her. Clary was always kind to her, and working with the plants took Lina's mind off of grief. Well, said Miss Clary. She smiled at Lina, wiped her hands on her already grimy pants, and smiled some more. Finally, she said, "You're a messenger." "Yes," Lina said, "and I have a message for you. It's from Adrian Swin. Please add 4 extra crates to my order. 2 of potatoes and 2 of cabbages." Clary frowned. "I can't do that," she said. At least I can send him the cabbages, but only 1 small crate of potatoes." "Well, we have a sort of problem with the potatoes." "What is it?" asked Lina. Clary had a habit of answering questions in the briefest possible way. Remember, she's a woman of few words. You had to keep asking and asking before she would believe you really wanted to know and weren't just trying. Then she would explain, and you could see how much she knew and how much she loved her work. "I'll show you," she said. She led the way to a bed where the green leaves were spotted with black. "A new disease. I haven't seen it before. When you they're runny instead of hard, and they stink. I'm going to have to throw all the ones in this bed. There are only a few beds left that aren't infected." Most people in Ember had potatoes at every meal. Mashed, boiled, stewed, roasted. They had fried potatoes too. Cooking oil ran out. "I'd hate it if we couldn't have potatoes anymore," said Lina. "I would too," said Clary. They sat on the edge of the potato bed and talked for a while about Lina's grandmother and the baby, and about the trouble Clary was having with beehives, and about the greenhouse sprinkler system. It had. Clary hesitated and glanced sideways at Lina. "For a long time," she said. She didn't want to say, "since your father died." Lina understood that. She stood up. "I should go," she said. "I have to take Abram Swin the answer to his message." "I hope you'll come back again," said Clary. "You can come whenever. You can come anytime." Lina said thank you and turned to go. But just outside the greenhouse, she heard running footsteps and a strange high sobbing sound. Or rather, she heard sobs and then a wail, sob, and then more sobs, getting louder. She looked back towards the rear of the greenhouse, toward the trash heaps. Clary, she called. There's something. Clary came out and listening too. Did you hear it? Yes, said Clary. She frowned. I'm afraid it's someone who... She peered toward the crying noise. Yes. Here he comes. Her strong hand gripped Lena's shoulder for a moment. You'd better go, she said. I'll take care of this. What is it? Never mind, just go on. But Lina wanted to see. Once Clary had walked away, she ducked behind the tool shed, and from there she watched. The noise came closer. Out beyond the trash heap was a man running and stumbling, his arms flapping. He looked as if he was about to fall over, as if he could hardly pick up his feet. In fact, he came close. He came closer. As he came closer, he did fall. He tripped over a hose and crumpled to the ground as if his bones were dissolved. Clary stooped down and said something to him in a voice so low for Lina to hear. The man was panting. When he turned over and sat up, Lina saw that his face was scratched and his eyes wide open in fright. His sobs had turned into hiccups. She recognized him. It was Sadge Merrill, one of the clerks at the supply depot. He was a quiet, long-faced man who always looked worried. Clary helped him to his feet. The two of them came slowly toward the greenhouse, and as they got closer, Lina could hear what the man was saying. He spoke very fast in a weak, trembled voice, hardly stopping to breathe. "We're sure I could do it. I said to myself, just one step after another. That's all, one step after another. I knew it would be dark. Who doesn't know that? But I thought, well, dark can't hurt you. I'll just keep going, I thought." He stumbled and stagged against Clary. Careful, Clary said. They reached the door of the greenhouse, and Clary struggled to open it. Without thinking, Lina darted out from behind the tool shed and opened it for her. Clary shot her a quick frown and said nothing. Sadge didn't stop talking. But then the farther I went, the darker it was, and I couldn't keep walking. Instead of the dark wall in front of you, I kept turning around to look at the light of the city because to see. And then I say to myself, don't look back, keep moving. But I kept tripping and falling. The ground is rough out there. I scrambled on my hands. He held out one hand and stared at the red scratches on it, which oozed drops of blood. They got into Clary's office and sat him down in his chair. He rambled on. Be brave, I said to myself. I kept going and going, but then all of a sudden I thought, anything could be out there. There could be a pit of 1,000 feet deep, right in front of me. There could be something that bites. I've heard stories, rats as big as garbage bins. And I had to get out of there, so I turned around and I ran. Never mind, said Clary. You're all right now. Lina, get him some water. Lina found a cup and filled it from the sink in the corner. Sadge took it with a shaking hand and drank it down. What were you looking for? Asked Lina. She would have been looking for what she would have been looking for if she'd gone out there. She thought about it countless times. Sadge stared at her. He seemed to have a puzzled question over her. He seemed to have been puzzled over her question. She thought about it, Finally, he said, I was looking for something that could help us. What would it be? I don't know. Like a stairway that leads somewhere, maybe? Or a building full of, I don't know, useful things? But you didn't find anything or see anything, Lina asked, disappointed. Nothing. Nothing. There is nothing there. His voice became a shout, and his eyes looked wild again. Or if there is, we can never get to it. Never. Not without a light. He took a long, shaky breath. For a while, he stared at the floor. Then he stood up. I think I'm all right now. I'll be going. He went down the path and out the door. Well, said Clary, I'm sorry that happened while you were here. I'm afraid you might be scared. That's why I told you to go. But Lena was full of questions, not fear. She had heard tales of people who tried to go out into the unknown regions. She had thought about it herself. In fact, she'd wondered the same thing as Sage, making her way out into the darkness and coming to a wall in which she would find the door to a tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel would be the other city and the city of light that she had dreamed about. All it would take was the courage to walk away from Ember and into the darkness, and then to keep going. Carry a light to show the way, but in Ember, there was no such thing as a light you could carry with you. Outside lights were fixed to their poles or to the roofs of houses. Instead, inside lights were set to the ceiling and had cords that had to be plugged in. Over the course of Ember's history, clever people had tried to invent a movable light, but all of them had failed. One man had managed to ignite the end of a stick of wood by holding it against the electric burner on his stove. City with the flaming stick, planning to use it to light his journey, but by the time he got to the trash heaps, his torch had gone out. Other people latched onto his idea. One woman who lived in Deadlock Street, very near the edge of the city, managed to get into the unknown regions with her flaming stick. Burned quickly, and before she could go far, the flames singed her hands, and she threw it down. Everyone had tried to penetrate the unknown regions. Everyone who had tried to penetrate the unknown regions had come back within a few hours, their enterprise a failure. Lina and Claire the open door of the greenhouse and watched Sage shuffle toward the city. As he neared the trash heaps, two guards who had been sitting on the ground got to their feet. They walked over to Sage, and each of them took a hold of one of his arms. Uh-oh, Clary said. Trouble. But Sage hadn't broken any law, said Lina. Doesn't matter. They need something to do. They'll get some fun out of scaring him. One of the guards was shaking his finger at Sage and saying something in a voice almost loud enough for Lina to hear. Poor man, said Clary with a sigh. He's the fourth one this year. The guards were now, one on either side of him. Sage looked limp and small between them. What do you think is out in the unknown regions, Clary? Clary stared down at the ground where the light from the greenhouses had casted long, thin lines of them both. I don't know. Nothing, I guess. Do you think Ember is in a dark world? Clary sighed. I don't know, she said. She gave Lina a long look. Her eyes, Lina thought, looked a little sad. They were a deep brown, almost the color of the earth in the garden bed. Clary put a hand on her pocket and drew something out. Look, she said, in the palm of her hand with a white bean. Something in this seed knows how to make a bean plant. How does it know that? I don't know, said Lina, staring at a hard, flat bean. It knows because it has life in it, said Clary. But where does its life come from? What is life? Lina could see the words were welling up in Clary now. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks were rosy. Take a lamp, for instance. When you plug it in, it comes alive in a way. It lights up. That's because it's connected to a wire that's connected to the generator, which is making electricity, though don't ask me how. But a bean isn't connected to anything. Neither are people. We don't have plugs or wires that connect us to generators. What makes living things go is inside them somehow. Her dark eyebrows drew together over her eyes. What I mean is, she said finally, something is going on that we don't understand. They say builders made the city, but who made the builders? Who made us? I think the answer must be somewhere outside of Ember. In the unknown regions? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. She brushed her hands together in a time to get back to work way. Clary, said Lina quickly, here's what I think. Her heart sped up. She hadn't told this to anyone before. In my mind, I see another city. Lina watched to see if Clary was going to laugh at her or smile in that overly kind way. She didn't, so Lina went on. It isn't like Ember. It's white and gleaming. The buildings are tall and sort of sparkle. Everything is bright, not just inside the buildings, but all around them too, even up to the sky. I know it's just my imagination, but it feels real. I think it's real. Claire said, And then she said, where would such a city be? That's what I don't know, or how to get to it. I keep thinking there's a door somewhere, maybe out in the unknown regions, or a door that leads out of Ember, and then behind the door, a road. Clary just shrugged her shoulders. I don't know, she said. I have to get back to work, but here, take this. She handed Lina the bean seed, took a little pot from the shelf and scooped some dirt into it and handed the pot to Lina too. Stick the bean in here and water it every day, she said. It looks like nothing, like a little white stone, but inside there is life. That must be a sort of clue, don't you think? If we could just figure it out. Lina took the seed in the pot. Thank you, she said, and she wanted to give Clary a hug, but didn't, in case it would embarrass her. Instead, she just said goodbye and raced back toward the city. And that concludes our chapter 4. Now, friends, to answer my riddle of what fashion accessory we would not find in the city of Ember, it is, drumroll please, sunglasses. There's supposed to be a song playing right now. There we go. Now, guys, I want you to post a video of what the Bugfoot scurry looks like. Hopefully it looks better than my dancing. Until next time, friends. Goodbye!